out that's going to come out for this. We'll call the meeting to order and draw attention to the Open Meeting Act back there. And better call roll, I guess. Make sure we're all here. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Where's my fourth one? You were on the other side there. Yeah. Larry?
Here.
James?
Yep, here.
And Mr. Evans, Bob?
Yes.
So let's say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so with that, I guess, I don't know whether I'm in the right order here or not, but the meeting's open. So, first thing on the agenda is the closure of the books in a timely manner. So, I don't know who did the agenda, so whatever you have. And if you will, let's use this because we could hear it. I'll come up here.
I will. We would like to see that the books are closed in a timely manner. I would say 2 months, no later than 2 months back would be a timely manner. Would you two agree with that? Or the council agree with that?
What's that?
2 months?
You have 2 months to get them closed?
Yes.
We gotta go way back from, is it December of 2019?
Yes, that was the last time they were closed, is that correct? Correct.
Is that possible? Are there clerks to do this, or to get these books closed? Or how do we close them? If we don't know how, we're gonna have to get somebody in here to close their books. We cannot keep running our town with 16 or 13 months of books open.
Can everybody hear us without this, or do you want this to be used?
As long as he's not on, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, can
Just talk louder.
Yeah, just talk.
Well, when we tried to listen to the YouTube presentation last week, and we couldn't hear anything that you were saying, Jim, there very clearly. So I just thought that it might be of value. So if we want to speak up or whatever. Larry, do you have an idea what closing the books is exactly? What are you asking for?
We don't have a true financial picture.
Yes, we do have true.
Well, we don't see what our budget is. We don't see nothing because we don't know if the books were closed from 2019, if we got 13 months going.
Okay, my question is, do you understand what it means to close the books?
What we need or how does it work?
What you need. What is the problem with them?
Why are we keeping them open is my question.
I've explained that several times. The only thing that the closing of the books does is that it takes the profit and loss number and puts it into an equity account. It's the same thing that happens on a balance sheet. If you did a balance sheet, you do profit and loss, take that profit and loss and put it into the equity. The equity then plus the liability equals the asset. It's a matter of just showing it on a sheet. The closing is simply a operation of the computer that adds that profit and loss to the equity account. As it does that, I don't know what the computer term would be, but it locks, I guess, would be as good a thing as anything. So that if you wanted to go in and change a profit and loss, if you wanted to change an item in the profit and loss, or in any of the accounts, then you could still do it. But you would need to go in and do a general journal entry that said, on this date, we're debiting this and crediting this, and this is the date it was done, and so forth.
Why would you, if you close the books, let's say from, let's just use last month, from the 1st to the 30th, we done our business, we paid our bills, we checked everything out, we closed the books, so there, why would we want to go back and change the profit and loss? Or why would we want to go back till 2019 and move some money or do whatever we have to do, change some numbers? Why would we want to do that? It's supposed to be current, it's supposed to be perfect every month that we get it done.
It is.
Well, then why don't we close them?
Because they're not perfect, and I've explained that to you.
Well, we don't.
So we had spoke last week, or last meeting, that a lot of it has to do with how we pay through the taxes that we bring in, water, sewer water, and such, and that was one of the reasons why.
Nope. That equity, that fund is fine.
No, I'm saying, but you said we leave the books open so you could go back and use those funds to pay certain parts of the city bills.
We have been, and because we have been moving that, yes. We have
Right.
been reassigning the wages to the sewer rather than the general fund.
Right.
But
Right.
that was being, and before, let's see, before, well, I didn't, I guess I did it in 19. Before I got a hold of the books, let's put it that way. Those same things were being done, but they were being done as, let's say Patrick worked 2 hours at the sewer, 2 hours on water, 2 hours on here.
Right.
They were being expensed to each of those accounts each time.
Okay.
So if you took 2 times whatever the wage was and then figured the Social Security and figured a percentage of the medical benefits and a portion of all of the things.
Right.
So when we sometimes had 2 pages that we were handed that were covering one pay period on one person. I found that in some cases, maybe, I don't know whether it was an entry thing on the part of the person who entered it or whether it was just because of not being set up right or whatever, but there were some hours missed, and they're so scattered that you can't bring them back around without. But it goes into their payroll account, but again, they're still scattered. So I just simply put everything into general wages,
For now. And then,
broke it up into regular, overtime, weekend, just the ones that are definitely different from one another. And then, at the end of each month, we can take a portion of that and expense it to sewer along with all the benefits and so forth and so on. It's just a simpler way to do it.
right.
Same thing. It also tends to put, I've also numbered all of that stuff so that we could just put a number on it instead of looking at 50 different accounts to try to find out where we're at. It's a simplification of what we were doing.
Which I totally, we understand that,
Okay?
but that process shouldn't take more than a month or 2 back.
If you're doing a year,
If you're doing it monthly.
yeah, but it wasn't being done monthly.
But it is being done monthly now.
As soon as it's all caught up, yes, and we are just about done with 2020 W-2s, we're going to close them out.
So, but what I'm saying.
19 is still a mess, or not a mess, but it's getting there. But 19 is still a question, let's put it that way. And until I get the answers, we got, was it a refund? Notification of something $30 or $50.
50 or something today.
And I talked with our IRS representative who's in Sioux City a week or so ago, actually 2 weeks, because he was going to get something to me in a week and he hasn't done it. He said that the stuff that had been sent to the IRS that he had not seen. He said, "You got anything?" I said, "No." And he said, "They've had it for over 6 months and they're not posting and getting back to me." Until that's all cleared, that I would rather have it in the books right.
Why was 19 such a mess?
Pardon?
Why was 2019 such a mess?
I wasn't doing it, Jim. I'm not going to evaluate anything.
It's just
Yeah.
a general question.
Yeah.
A payroll
That's the way it was
mess?
being done.
It was a payroll mess? It was a...
Most of that, yes. I have gone through every entry of every check written and every piece of income. So I have tried to redo in 6 months what was done sloppy or incorrect or accidentally or as taught but not right in a year and a half. So to redo a year and a half and keep up with a half a year, I think we're doing pretty good to get almost caught up in this 6 months. That's as much as I can say, I guess, at that point.
So we have clerk books and QuickBooks, correct?
That's true.
And it seems to me when I was on the board,
You are on board.
when last sessions, we said that was going to make it simpler for us and make it faster and less time that we'd have to sit there and entries. And it seems to me like every month it gets to be such a longed out, dragged out affair that maybe we need to get Eddie here. Maybe we need to get here and see if he can straighten it out. And if you don't get along with Eddie, I don't know what to tell you. We need to have somebody come in here and check our books. I'm sorry. We just need to get somebody in here that can help us out in a short notice.
I need you to come in the office and actually sit down and look at them. Maybe you'd understand them better.
Well, you know,
But it doesn't do any good to come in here and yell.
well, you know something, when we go in your office, and I've been there a couple times, you get so your way and only your way, and that's the way it's going to be. That's the way it looks like to me when somebody goes in your office, because people tell me, and I've been down there and I've watched you go, you get louder. And maybe I'm getting loud now. But I'm just getting tired of watching our books.
This is not an evaluation of me,
No,
sir.
it's not. No,
Then
it's
knock
not.
it off.
We're not going to evaluate you.
I'm calling this, that you're out of order. If you've got a question to ask about this, this is not an evaluation of your mayor. You don't get to do that.
We want some things done.
Excuse me, you don't get to do that. Next question, what do you want?
We'd like to have the books closed.
So what are your, so you're finished in 2019, and that's, you said it's coming to an end. I'm
And
assuming-
20's almost done, James, but here's the deal. You have to do them in succession.
Right, I understand.
And
So
if
19's
we
about
try
done.
to jump ahead, we're gonna mess it
No,
up.
once 19's done, and we get into 2020
We'll
numbers,
just close it month after month.
so we should be able to,
In a
we should
day's
be able
time,
to
probably.
expedite that, correct?
Yep.
So by April,
No, we were kind of planning on next week or two.
to have 2020,
If we get, yeah, we want the W-2s out at the end of this week.
but the book's closed for 2020.
I won't close the book. I won't put the W-2s out till everything's incorrect. And then it's just a matter of pushing the button.
Okay, so we'll address this again. Once 19 is done, 2020 should be smoother, and we should be able to get,
And all those, there's nothing wrong with these. This is what I'm trying to get across to you, Larry. There is no, the books are not incorrect. I don't know why you've got that.
saying they're
in.
we're not saying they're
I'm not
incorrect.
saying they're incorrect.
Yes, you did.
They're not getting done.
Okay.
No.
Well, if they're not done, they'd be incorrect.
No.
Okay.
We just want to get them closed so that number is locked in, and then we move on to the next month, and like you're saying.
And those reports are all correct, and they can be printed out at any time.
I'm not denying that they're not.
Every month, every 3 months, you can have 2 months report, you can have a 3-month report, you can have a quarter. I do it all the time. Do this quarter to do your payroll. Check this against that.
Okay, so we'll address this in the April meeting and see where we're with are you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the next item, I think, is, let me see if I don't have the agenda in front of me.
Working hours of city personnel.
Right. So, you tell me, Cheryl, when I drive through town on Saturday night, the lights are on and we got probably your vehicle or one of the workers' vehicles here at 11 o'clock at night. What's going on? Are we open this 24 hours? I want an explanation why we're having, how many hours that the clerk office is open. I see some of the staff cars parked over here.
Not at 11 o'clock at night, you know.
Well,
You might see mine, but...
5
and you
o'clock
might-
is quitting time, man.
Why does this bother you if I'm trying to catch the books up? Why does this bother you? You want this done, but you don't want me to work here. I can't do
Are
it
you
without...
doing the books or is our clerks doing the books?
I just explained to you that I am doing that work on the computer, along with Lisa showing me how to do the clerk books, the QuickBooks, whatever. She and I are the only two that have had any experience on QuickBooks too. We have another one now that's got some experience on it and is learning more and more.
So somebody's getting paid either overtime or something, aren't they?
I don't get paid any overtime.
I never said you, Cheryl. I never said you were getting paid.
Okay.
But it seems like people are driving through town
I don't care
in
about
the evening
people.
and they see
I
the
don't-
lights on in the clerk's office like he says.
You know what? Why do I care?
There's,
Do you care what people say?
Well, I do.
Maybe just don't talk about it. Next question.
well,
If that hurts you in any way, then you have a complaint. If it doesn't, you don't have a complaint. Next question.
I guess the only concern I have is, are we overworking our employees?
No.
Do we have enough?
No, we're getting there now. We've actually, Lisa's been able to take Fridays off, go
Okay.
take care of her baby, her
Right.
grandbaby. Sometimes when there's something that she's the one that needs to help look at it, or she feels, actually, she's the one that usually feels like she'd like to get this finished up.
Right.
Then she will say, I'd like to work at a different time so that I can do this. We've tried to accommodate that as long as the office is open from 8 to 4:30, from Monday through Thursday, then people need to work.
And Lisa doesn't pull any weekends.
Not unless it's a Saturday that she's missed 2 days and we got a deadline Monday.
Something that come up and you can work around.
Yeah.
They can be worked around. Okay. Okay. I'm just worried about burning somebody off.
Yeah, well, we were getting close. The complaints are going to burn us out before anything. Let's go on.
So
We're looking for a clarification, modification of the 2021 budget. I'm still confused as, I have 4 pages of document which were presented to board members at the time, or council members at the time, which were voted or approved as a budget.
No, let me explain what happened there. Because you guys weren't here, so where did you get your information?
right here, I have.
Okay. So how did you see it?
We only have 4 pages here, and that's the night you were in here. You were upset, the computer crashed, and I don't know what all was going in, but we had 4 pages here, 1, 2, 4, and 5. There was no 3.
Okay, well, page numbers don't mean anything. What's on it?
Well,
Were you
then I seen what was sent down to Lincoln. It's 15 pages, and the board never
I'm
even
sure
seen
you,
it.
no, yes, you
Did you
did.
see it, Isla?
Absolutely, it was presented.
Wait a minute, we seen this 4 pages.
Okay. I'm going to say this, and I'm not going to argue the thing one way or another. But Arlene's probably as good as anybody of coming in and taking her whole packet home and putting it in a notebook. I asked her to bring her notebook in so we could figure out what had happened. That complete budget was in her notebook as of October.
End of October, yeah.
All right, so here's what happened. The budget is due on the 20th of September. A week ahead of time, we had the budget meeting. It was advertised in the paper. Okay? As a matter of fact, Brooke, I believe that I saw you, Brooke, I believe, I'm not going to draw you in. I ran into Brooke on the street and I said, I'm going to send this to Norfolk because we didn't get it published and we're past your publication date. So we put it in the Norfolk paper so we would be legal. And like you said, everything went wrong that day. The pages you got were the 18th, because on a budget you have the 2 prior years. So we would be foreseeing 2021. So on there you'd have 19, 20, and 18, 19. So those were filled in, and then the forecast broke down. So, but I explained to the board that in the past, for the past however many years, all the time Charlie was here and now, that in order to keep everything going, that we have had a 50-cent levy, and that is the top levy we can have. 45 cents of that is actually the top levy unless you have an interlocal agreement with things that you can say these are over and above. We have our, and those interlocals include our memberships, for example, with economic development. We pay for the water with the fire department. There's several things that we use for interlocal agreements that gives us that extra 5 cents. So it said, in order to get all those together, I would like the board to go ahead and approve the 50-cent levy. That's what the meeting was about. I had the profit and losses, I had the balance sheet. But the breakdown had come on the carryover of cash reserve, because the county had sent me a paper that we had something like $15,000 over there sitting in, and the state said that can't be. So it didn't match the carryover money, of the cash on hand money. That's still an issue, because, and I'm trying, I think I just haven't even had time to get back to work on it for the last 3 months, or 2 months, or 3 weeks at least. But I believe what is happening is that the county is giving me figures off just the property tax, and the state is picking up both the property tax and the township, because we get part of the township. So what's sitting over there for us is more than just the property tax. So as soon as I can clarify that, clarify any other questions they have, then I'll know where that came from. In the meantime, I called the state. They said, that's fine. Go ahead and verify your levy. If you're not off too far, or if you are off a little bit, whatever, I don't think there's where there was any amount of money. But if it doesn't add up to the same figures that you had in that income on that first page that was put into that 50-cent levy, then you have 30 days to correct it. We did, in fact, found the certified copy of the correction, went into the paper, and in that same meeting that October meeting, Arlene had her copy of the budget. Now, if not everybody had it, if it got overlooked, if we had it laying over there and not everybody picked it up, whatever. Usually all that went in a packet. I'm not even going to try to say this was here and that was there. That's too long ago and too many people involved.
Well, my question is,
But that
never
question came up a month ago or so, and at that time, I'm pretty sure that I gave you the full budget.
Right, but the paper that Isla and I seen on September, what was our meeting, 19th or the week before, Monday before the 20th, you had to hustle and get, and you had 4 pages because of
Okay, you're talking a year ago. I'm talking a month ago. I gave you the 4 pages.
I understand you did that, but I never seen
Okay.
page 3 with the $125,000.
Okay, I'm sorry. What do you want me to say?
I want to know where that $125,000 came from, an outlay, capital improvement came from that we didn't even talk about. And I'm talking about this $40,000 for other capital outlay that wasn't even on these little 4 pages that we had to begin with.
No, they wouldn't have been.
Why did you put this in here without the board?
Because if you get money, you have to spend it.
Don't you think the board's got to know something before it goes
Okay.
down to Lincoln?
Okay, what are we gonna build in the next?
I have no idea.
Is the sewer on the line, on the budget, on the?
Well, yeah, but we don't know where that's going either because we don't, not be informed. We got to get a new engineer, I understand.
Answer my question, please. Are we going to build the sewer? Do we have to?
We have to, yes.
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 Okay, so wouldn't it make sense to put $125,000 into a capital project that we could go for a sewer?
Did we know that? Did we know that as a board? No.
At the
We got
time,
to be informed.
at the time you got that, did you come in and ask?
Not these 4 pages we never had. It's not even on there.
Okay. We're back.
No, we're not going to go. We're going to settle this right now. Where did that $125,000 come from that you put in there? Where did you figure up that number first? I'd like to know where you got that $125,000.
Are you asking me where the money is?
Where it came from.
Where it came from?
Okay, if you will look at those 4 pages, if you will look at the income on page 2, now find your big one, find your complete one.
The complete, okay. I never seen a complete one until
Do you have a complete one now?
Yes, I do.
Yes, then please.
Listen,
put-
Cheryl.
Okay.
No. Makes
I'm
sense
sorry.
why these papers are in
I'm
line.
sorry. Look at column 3, adopted budget for 2021 on page 2. Very last column, clear at the right.
I see it.
Okay? What's on the very, very top of page 5? Or line 5.
609,509.
What is that? Does that say what that is?
It just says adopted budget 2021.
No. What does line 5 tell you that is?
Subtotal of beginning balance.
Okay.
That's what it says.
Okay, that's cash carryover. Go to the bottom. What do we have on line 24?
$1 million something. $1,074,000.
That's the money that was available to spend this year, 2021.
Well, don't you think, Cheryl, don't you think it would have been nice if we would have sat down? with the
Listen,
board
I'm not
and-
going to be chewed out here.
Well, I'm not either.
We're not chewing you out. We just.
That's what he's doing.
No, we're here asking questions.
Then ask the questions. Don't give me this. Wouldn't it be nice if we knew? We've already been there. I'm sorry you didn't know.
Well, you must have known that you sent this in without the board approval. We didn't see these. I have never seen all these papers. She told, I have no excuse after excuse.
We need to, can we re-look at the budget? And
Okay.
reapprove the budget. I don't want to do it tonight. But the 4-page budget I was given wasn't.
You shouldn't have been given it. That wasn't the budget. All you had to do was ask me for the budget. It's right there in the office. And he's got it too.
What's
Yeah,
that?
but who had the input on it, Cheryl, besides you?
Who did it the year before, Larry?
Well, you're saying we don't want to go back that far.
No,
How come
who
we
did it
don't-
the year before?
All I'm
Do
asking,
you recall that? No, let's let him answer that. Do you recall that
A year before,
the year before?
we went through the budget.
Yeah.
How come we
Do
didn't have it
you,
this time?
who did that budget?
Probably you did.
That's right.
But you know, you talked
That's
to the
right.
board.
And remember that table that sat over there? And I worked on that for a week or two, and you guys came in, you all knew I was doing the budget, you was all perfectly happy with it. Now this year, you're not happy that I did the same thing.
Would have been nice if you'd had it all on the table like you showed us again and had a working meeting. We didn't even have that.
Yes, we did.
Not
That
last
wasn't a
year.
working meeting, said.
Not last year, did we, Isla? Did we have a working meeting last
Don't
year?
get me in the middle of this.
Well, you were on the board with me.
I gave you the figures of profit and loss that night, and the four pages that you have, page 2 that you have.
Page
has-
3, we don't. There's no page 3 here.
I didn't say page 3.
There's 1, 2, 5, 4, and 5. And there's no 3. 3 would have showed us that there was 125,000 in there that I guess you had money to spend. It's not in here. The 4 pages are not here.
And the 125, is that just put in the bank?
Okay. See, this is why. No, do you guys have a copy of this? Yes, please. Yeah. Okay, I got to get up and walk if you don't mind.
No, you're free.
Cushion isn't good.
And we all know we have a major project looming. We all know.
Okay.
I'm just curious.
So let me see if I can just give a little bit of a rundown here. We get property tax from the county. We get tax on motor vehicles from the county. We get sales tax from local. We get a portion of the state sales tax, more than just it's a motor vehicle thing. So if anybody that lives in our area, we get a highway allocation from the state. We get a municipal equalization from the state. Now, I'm going to say that this sounds like that this was all payroll, and you asked that question, James, if it was all payroll, and I have to back up and say, no, it wasn't all payroll. Because as you went back through those books, when the stuff came in from the state, it might just be stuck in an account from the state. In effect, I learned this because of our street man who said, we've got to spend what came in for the streets on the streets, and you've got to prove you did.
Right.
So I had to go to him, and I've told you this before, I remember telling you that, and say, and he and his secretary in his office went to the state and said, how much did you give them, county, how much did you give them, etc. Then we went to what was spent on the streets. Well, if it didn't go into the right account, we're not sure it came out of the right account too. But you understand that if you're out there buying rock and oil and stuff for the roads, that you can pretty well expense that. You can also expense wages and so forth. Absolutely. So it became my mission to make this so that that was very, very clear, so that on a monthly basis you knew exactly what came in and exactly what went out for each of those funds. The books were also set up to the so-called general fund, and then we had a general bank account, and then we had a general something else. So we began to rename. So the general fund works out of the operating fund, operating bank account. So we have an operating fund. This general fund means that we can use county money, our payroll, or not our pay, excuse me, our general taxes, property tax, is what pays for that. So if you went back to the last 2 or 3 years, or 4 or 5, and this was set up, this is nobody's fault, this was set up with clerk books, and it was set up because nobody in the office understood QuickBooks. So stick it in there, and then at the end of the month, you close out the books, and you'll look, and there'll be 99999999. And that whole thing, every time somebody ran into something that they didn't know where to put it, it was marked, ask my accountant. Eddie came in at the end of whatever, and he took it, put it here, put it there, made journal entries, closed the books. But the closing of the books took all of those 9999s, so we had a general fund that we didn't have enough money in to cover the wages, or we didn't have enough money in to cover the street thing. So so out of some other fund, that 9999 would transfer in there to cover it. Now, there was probably never anything illegal about it, with the possible exception of the lost fund. If they were being used for some other reason than a restricted reason, then that was illegal, because those are restricted funds. If the highway funds were being used somewhere else, that was illegal, because they're supposed to go to highways. Thank you. So, you know, I knew that would, you think about 6 months, or this could take 5 years if you would try to uncover everything. So I said, I'm going to take the last 2 years. The auditors have been there. They found a lot. They asked me to clean up some stuff, mostly on payroll. And so I figured that if we got 1920 and got through the auditors with good shape, we would be on our way. So I have concentrated on the 19 and 20 year. And then to make sure that the 20, in the end of 19, and then 1920 was right. So that when what we will send to the auditors now will be the fiscal year 1920. The year before was better than it had been. Just a fact. They were here, they didn't last long, cost us less, and so forth. We talked about that. What I've done now is go through 19 and 20, for example, and I went through every county payout and made sure that it was in the right items and numbered the items, so that now when those come into the office, the girls can, that's what this is, and the number is written down, they can go and it goes in the right one. Nobody has to go in and redo stuff. Not only do you have to put it in the right account, but then there's a classification. So it tells you whether you're going into the operating fund, or whether you're going into a street fund, or whether you're going into a restricted fund of some other kind. Those have to be lined up. It took me a good Saturday when there's no interruptions and no phone calls, because you have to sit down and line your accounts up on a double screen with your classifications so that they go in the right place. One of the things that people don't understand is that you cannot hold money from year to year. There's a spot on that that reserve, the cash reserve percentage, 45%. And I don't remember exactly what it is, but you can't go over a certain amount. In other words, you can't just stockpile money, because this is government money that's here to take care of the tax. That's the way the auditors told me. So if you're going to save some money, then you have to set it. There's a list on the page. The lid supporting schedule. That tells you, if you have page 10, your capital improvement lid exemption, because I put $25,000 in for the swimming pool and the $125,000. I can't read my own writing.
City maintenance?
Maintenance. I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me, but it must have been. I was thinking it was for the sewer. Maybe because that would be a repair.
And does that money go in?
That we can hold. Then we can, because we put it into capital expenditures, if we don't spend it, we won't get in trouble.
Does that go into an account, into a CD, into?
It can.
It's just, but it's, you didn't, the first month, you didn't, it's 125 over 12 months.
It's in the budget, and that's the other misunderstanding, is that because you do not have to, there's an ordinance that says that you look at your overall picture, you do not have to account for every penny out of every fund. So in the past, when those forms were printed that said here's the actual as opposed to the budgeted, the budget only went in at that total for that fund. They weren't broken down by accounts. I've played with that on that. I don't have time to play with it, but I've tried to play with that to see there's a lot of different ways of setting up that budget. Most of them are set up based on what you spent the year before. I mean, that's just what the budget is. So, I thought, actually, the auditors told me last year and the year before that we were setting pretty good to have over $1 million spending authority.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
To have over $1 million spending authority, pretty darn good for a town our size. And what that means is it's there and we can spend it. We can also, that's why I put that into the capital expenditures, because we can hold it over. We know we're going to have, and you know also that that we paid for the sewer that we've been billed for. And let's just stop any of those rumors while we're at it. We've met with those engineers that cannot.
Explain, so we have paid every bill up till now that they.
Yes.
And the firm that couldn't do it, we
Yeah, that's where I'm going right now.
125.
They are not able to complete
Right.
the project.
Right.
I think it's 137.
I don't know.
It's somewhere.
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah. When we were going to have a meeting with them to try to find out where we were headed, we felt that they wanted to meet with possible people to pass it off on, to hand it over to, I should say. I don't want to say pass it off on, to hand it over to.
Instead of give it back to us, give it back to the next company that we're
That
hiring.
only makes sense, so that they could say, here's what we've, I asked them, can you give what you have accomplished
So we don't.
to another one so we don't start over? We had JEO and Miller's come get online, and we had a meeting with them, and they sent both of them, it's a notebook about yay thick, that's, most of us, you know, if we're not an engineer, we wouldn't come close to reading. It's schemes and it's whatever, measurements, etc. One of the things that came up briefly was that we had paid them a lot of money. And the head of KM said, I fully am aware of that. We have no intentions of making that a problem for you. I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to make this right. If not, we've got all the paperwork we need. We've got a lawyer. It's that simple. But they have been more than helpful in everything. We have had, Millers have been out and met with the guys and looked at the plan. Talked about some other possibilities of deviating away from what was originally planned if necessary. And we plan to meet with JEO shortly. Then I've asked them if they would then, I don't want to ask anybody to go into a big design an expense on their part until they know they've got the job. And we did a proposal with 3 companies before, and that's why I called Miller, because they were here with the original one along with KM and Stockwell. So at that point, and this, I told him I'd like to do this soon after the 8th of February, because we need to move. Our deadline to do something before we start being in non-compliance is the 22nd of July of 22.
Potential spam.
So, sorry about that. Hang on just a minute. Did you hear who that was from? That's the first one I've ever got like that. Potential spam is the name. So, I don't know if that's a real person or not. Where was I?
The engineers.
Okay, so the engineers, I've asked them if they could come out and do their questions and look at the plant and, get some ideas. Then I'm going to ask for a public meeting where the public can ask questions, hear their proposals, etc., and give feedback. And then we're hoping that that can happen by mid-February.
Back to that 120,000, with the budget the way it's laid out right now, do you have an idea at the end of the year, if things stay on track, it will be in the red and black, either way?
We're in the black.
No, but how much?
Where's our profit? We didn't fix the profit.
Well,
We're running, we're running.
But we don't have, do we have a percentage, a number?
Well, let's look at it this way. If you've got $400,000 or $500,000 in the bank of pure cash and nothing against it, how would you?
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the money we have in the bank. I'm talking about this year's budget. Where will we end up in the black or in the red, and by how much?
I guess that off the top of my head, I couldn't. The budget tells me that we're not going to be in. I mean, we're going to have it left over if we go. The budget is a guide to what we want to spend.
A budget is a guide to what you have, not
Yes.
the amount that you need to spend.
Yes,
Not the amount you need to
both. It includes both. There's income and expenses in it.
Well, I understand it, but we don't need to spend money on things that we know we have a major project coming up.
Okay, if you look at that budget on 2021 on page 2.
Yep.
Okay, so let's look at 1819.
Right.
See the cash forward, cash reserve?
Yep.
That was left over. That appears at the top of the next page on line 5. Then the rest of that is income. And then so on line 24, you have total resources available. So you had 1,898,000 and we spent 1,288,000. We had 609,000 left over at the end of 2020. That's carried over into the next column.
Okay. Yep.
If that budget goes the same way, we had 1,740,000 to spend. If we stay within the budget, we can spend 1,287, and we'll have 453 left over.
And do we have an idea what that sewer project's going to last?
Well, a lot more than it was 2 years ago.
Well,
4 years ago, they told us $1.3 million, and there's no way we'll get it for less than 3 now. Scary, isn't it?
Oh,
That's even the renovation, or is that a new one?
Well, either way, now they're about equal. If we go to a lagoon, the lagoon, when we first looked at this 4 years ago, and I was just first on the board, and Steve, you were there if you want to say anything and correct anything I say, but the way I understood at that time was that the lagoon would be much more expensive than rehabbing. And it was, I think we chose KM because they promised to rehab it for much less than, is that the way you remember it, Steve?
Pretty much so,
Yeah. So that, and then that was one point. The second point was that we were basically told that, I can't say that because I may have misunderstood that completely. My belief was that the lagoon had to be pretty close to the plant. And I don't know why I thought that, because I think in the back of my mind I thought it went from the plant to the lagoon. That's not the fact. And I'm sure that, we wouldn't even have this plant if we had a lagoon. It goes from the main sewer pipe directly to the lagoon. That was my total misunderstanding. So, I remember talking to Willie Tramp because we were talking about going out north there and said, that's all lagoon. That's already a lagoon. You're never going to get water to soak into the ground. I remember Jerry Steffens talking about that there might be farmers and there would be with the irrigation, because that's what they do sometimes when they've got to get rid of the water. They put it through a pivot. But then that only happens when there's excess water in the lagoon, and if the farmers are already inundated with water underground and top, who's going to take it? And all of those questions came up. And they were kicked around and kicked around and kicked around, and we came to the conclusion, nope, we just need to refurbish this. Because at that time now we could, well, once they got in here, DEE, which is the old DEQ that controls everything, said, nope, you can't do that because you've got a plant that's twice as big as what you need. So, or more. So that it was built too big. So the water doesn't get the sludge, the whatever, out of there because water's not moving enough, it's not deep enough. So we got to go in, we're going to shorten it. No, we're going to deepen it. No, we're going to add concrete. No. So this is, I think, where KM may have been in over their head a little bit. They don't build that many. Did maybe make some promises of what could happen that couldn't happen. And I'm not degrading them at all. They gave us what they had, so forth. So now Miller's came in and they talked about this at that time. They said, but things get outdated and this and that. So when they came and talked to us last week, they said, are you still dead set against the lagoon? And I said, well, I guess, because I thought that was the only option we had. So then they came in, and the guys came in, and we all got to kicking ideas around, and they said, really? I said, well, yeah, you don't have to have it that close to town. Well, we got to thinking, well, maybe they're, and I said, oh, you don't have to go through the plant? No. So I got a big education, so I'm sure that I'm dumber than most, but there's probably a few out there that's probably feeling like I did, don't know exactly what's going on. So we kind of opened the doors that you give us your ideas and give us what you think is the best deal for our town. We know for a fact, and that's why the USDA wanted us to do a lagoon, because long-time maintenance is cheaper. Our guys have to check that twice a day. If you wonder why you see them around on weekends, they can't get out of town over 10 miles. That's in their contract. And we're holding things together down there with baling wire sometimes. We've put 2 new pumps in for what, $700 or something? Because it's falling apart. So we know that it needs some major work. And then you have to say, should we be looking at a lagoon that you'll never have to look at that again? Maybe that pipe out to someplace out of town is going to cost us more initially but you won't have to buy those pumps down there. You won't have to fix the plant. You won't have the guys having to check that. You won't have to replace those meters that check your outflow, etc.
How big is this lagoon?
Don't know. That's what they're going to do. They've got to do, and they'll have to do that based on how much water goes through. And we are preparing. That's another thing in the office. We are putting together all of the water that is bought by the town from Cedar Knox. Lisa worked on that today, I believe. They want, and so when we get to the financing, they're going to say, we're not going to finance you unless you have a way to pay for this. And the best way to pay for this is through your sewer rates. And you've heard me say this, that was going to be required. We pay $32 a month. Everybody in town that has this pays $32 a month. That's not fair to the little old ladies like me who uses way less than the family with 10 kids. And that's what USDA will tell you. We won't do it that way. It is not equitable, it's not fair. So we've known this for a while. It is also not fair to charge somebody that has a beautiful lawn and has underground sprinklers and takes care of their lawn, and we love to go by and see it, that spends a lot of money on water in the summertime. So the general practice, and what we're doing now, is collecting the amount of water used in, was it December, January, February? You remember? December, January, February. So those are the months that you're probably not going to have any outside watering. And that will give us an idea. Eventually that'll come down to households, so that the sewer will be charged based upon the amount of water used, not just a flat fee. And frankly, this is the only town I've ever lived in. It wasn't that way. And you might say, and so what? Well, because I've lived in a lot of towns. So, okay. So we are gathering information for the two engineers that they can use, how much water we use, how much water goes through the plant. Now, after that water's gone through that little circle down there and gone through the clarifiers and dumps out into the creek, then there is another meter that tells us how much is going through there. We are told that 700 people would be metering out about 7,000 gallons a day. And that's what it was back when Olson checked it, however many years ago that was, 2015, when they gave the start of all this. But in the last year, we've been getting readings of 45,000, where we know we've got more than 450 people. So what does that mean? Well, that needs to be an engineer say something's not going through there right, something. So all of those things are being looked at. We want to build a system, and whether it is a mechanical plant or whether it is a lagoon, we want to feel that we did the very best that we could for the town of Crofton for as many years forward as can be. And probably, from all indications at this point, sorry. What did I say? I need this a little better. There we go. Say that. Must not have been important.
Well, bottom line is, we simply gotta wait for these engineers to make a move and go from there. Then will y'all have information to
Yeah,
know what you need to do?
that's where I was, whether it's a lagoon or whether it's a plant, we gotta figure out what's the best. And I think that by having both engineers present their stuff and be capable of the public asking questions, the board asking questions, what we'll do, we'll just do a regular board meeting and then do a lot of advertising. I want to put it in the paper at least twice, if I could get a date out of them. But we've got to meet with JEO yet to give them some information that they want to get started, and that's only fair. Give them the mill or something. We don't want to be telling them what we want at this point or what we see as the best way. We want them to tell us, because they're the professionals, what they do the best recommendation and some idea of what would be the best route, both financially and for the future. So if we're going to spend $3 million on the plant and $3 million on the lagoon, and we've got a logical place for a lagoon, and the upkeep is much cheaper over the next 50 years, then probably the logical thing is the lagoon. I was dead set against it, and I've gotten very open-minded after talking with different ones here. So, and I don't make that decision anyway, but we try to get all that information together and put it out there logically. It is not my job to make these decisions. It is my job to gather the information and get it out in as clear terms and information as I can. And so that's where we are.
I have another question on
Yep.
the budget, Cheryl, on page 2.
Yep.
Federal receipts,
The what?
federal, number 7.
Yep.
Went from 39,000 change, 119,000 change to 600,000?
Oh, we don't get any federal receipts.
It says federal
I
receipts,
know it does.
600,000.
I know it does, and that's very misleading, because look how many lines you have. Look how many lines you have on the budget, and we have this many lines of incomes and expenses. If you broke them all down. So what they tell me at the state is, you're not going to use that anyway, so just fill in amounts, put them together, because you can't possibly list them all. But if you look at a profit and loss, you could find every one of those.
I guess my question is, how did we go from 39 to 119 to 600?
Because it's very different accounts put in there. See, I see what I mean? Maybe we put in gas, oil, and maintenance in last year's, and then we put something else in this year's. We took a whole bunch of them and put them together. The first one, your personal property taxes, those are alike. The next two, you don't know what went in. The motor vehicle prorate was not separated out the year before, so we didn't know what it was. That MIRF is a special thing at the state, and I don't want to put anything in there because that means something else and we don't want to confuse them. The receipts, the highway allocation is about the same. Your motor vehicle fee is about the same. The state aid, we don't get any, so we don't want to we don't want to fill in something there that would mislead people thinking that we got that because that affects grants, etc. The municipal funds about the same. Apparently you've been through this, so you kind of know that. That nameplate capacity tax, we don't get that. So, but I probably picked the same thing. What I have thought, see the next one, the motor vehicle tax, much higher last year, the year before. I think we were already feeling the effects of something they're going. The local sales tax, it was much higher there. And there's probably the possibility that some of that motor vehicle tax was in the local sales tax and never separated out, because that wasn't always done. Look at the, in lieu of tax says 108,000, well, we didn't get that. So see, that kind of traded places with that one up above. In other words, you find an open thing and put it in there because there's not enough lines. And you know, for local purposes, you know, we can make a list of what all goes in there and I went through that profit and loss at that meeting. No matter what you hear, I went through it line by line. Both years.
It just jumped out at me that.
Yeah, sure, both of them are way off,
Yeah.
but that's it. And I talked with Deanna, you know, Hefner's the auditor at the auditor's office that guides me through it, and she said, just grab a line and stick it in. There's not enough lines. Now, I will point out to you though, see lines 21, 22, 23. The transfers in, because that's in the income, that's, if we use transfers into an account, then this would be spending that money. I didn't, if you notice on 18 and 19, there's 223,000 there. I didn't have anything in there. I sent it down to her and she said, can't do that. I said, why? We didn't transfer funds. We've set them up so that we don't have those 999s transferring funds all over. She said, no, but you did the year before. So you got to take care of those that were spent the year, that were put in there the year before. So I've just had to go with what they have and what our auditors say in a lot of cases too. There was not any transfers last year there. Proprietary, I was reading there that we, you know, that's just an understood. We don't even have to put that separately in there. Or we don't want to involve it with the taxes. Proprietary is our water, sewer, and garbage. And that's run like a local business. By the way, I think if any of you ever bother, or not bother, but if any of you consistently follow the amount of money that comes in on sales tax, the local option sales tax, we get 1% of the sales tax of the the sales made in the city of Crofton. When we went from 13,000 to 9,000, that's a $4,000 drop in 1 month. $4,000 in 1% sales tax represents $400,000 in sales. That's a lot of revenue lost in the city. Part of, I got to thinking about that and I thought, our income on our proprietary is large enough at this point that we generate a lot of our own sales tax because we charge tax on the proprietary fund. That goes into the state, turns around, and we get 1% back. So part of that measly $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 we're getting is our own taxes that we're paying. Good heavens, we're glad to get it, but we need to be generating business. You know, we need to, I don't know who generates the most. There's no way of telling. But I know that whatever's happened to our economy has hurt this income from sales tax. We're still filling out a lot of building permits, so there's still buildings going on, and that usually generates quite a bit. And the grocery store is, a lot of that food is exempt anyway. So it's people aren't traveling, they aren't eating out.
You mentioned the ones that sales tax, and that money was allocated. Where is that money at?
That's in the lost funds.
That's in the loss?
Yes. That's, lost stands for local option sales tax. We voted to have that 1% sales tax.
Right.
60% of that goes into the infrastructure.
Right.
20% goes into the swimming pool, and 20% goes into economic development.
And do we have separate accounts?
We do now.
with that money going?
When I came in, you couldn't tell where that money was coming in and going out. And I asked Eddie to separate them out, set them up separate, and we have them now.
So do we have separate, like, accounts at the bank where
No.
the money goes into?
No, this is just restricted. We don't have a separate account for the highways either.
No, but
We
this.
just show it as
But
restricted.
the pool money, shouldn't that be set aside if we ever get a chance to redo the pool?
I think the pool money that it comes in as donations should be set aside, and which, by the way, we're opening an account Wednesday.
But the pool money that comes in now, the 1 cent, we use that money where?
It's, since I've been here, it's all in that account,
It just goes into this account?
sitting there.
And then that account, where?
It's sitting in there, it's sitting in the account, it's in the bank.
I guess that was my original question, is this money not sitting in the bank somewhere?
It's in the bank, yeah, it's in the regular,
Or do we spend that money?
no,
It just has been, it's just been.
not since I've been there. Before, yes.
It's
It was spent on keeping up the parks and this and that and other thing.
Right,
They had it under the Parks and Rec,
right.
and then that tended to be, Eddie said to me, why are you moving the Parks and Rec? Why are you doing this? And I said, because that's a general fund. I said, every time we needed money to mow and to do this, we took it out of the taxes because it's a general fund. And he said, but that's a restricted fund. And I said, how do you see that way? And he said, well, because that's from your lost account. And I said, no, it isn't, Eddie. That was never intended to be paying for the mowing of the parks. So he agreed. We set up 3 separate accounts, and everything's there for the last 2 years.
With the numbers that you got from October 1st till, I guess, January here, where are we sitting in these individual categories to the budget? Are we higher, are we lower?
Don't know. Don't have anything in front of me, and I don't have an idea of that.
Cheryl, I understand you don't have it in front of you, I'm just asking.
I don't know.
Do we have a report that can give it to the
Sure.
board? Do we need,
But we'll have to set it up in the budget up in there to make it work that way.
well, that would help us make us the decisions when we have something in front of the board, and we don't know where we're sitting.
So what you need to do is to give me a list of reports that you want, and we can set them up that way.
Well, is the sewer and the water, is wages coming out of there? Or
Yep.
they're coming out of the general, they're just going out of the general fund, or are they taking out of the sewer and water fund?
Okay, back up again to everything goes into the general fund, and then we transfer them, and here's the general fund pays for all the
I realize
wages.
that.
Okay? Then at the end of the month, we say we are transferring, and we don't transfer money from one account to another, but it's a fund, it's fund account, okay? It says, here's the sewer fund, and this sewer fund is gonna pay for 20 hours this week for Larry to work. And it's also gonna pay all the social security, all that.
So that reflects on
and
our
that's
financial-
one lump sum. And if you look on a profit and loss, and I'll point it out to you next week, it'll show everything that was paid through general. And that's 6105. And then 610520 will say this is a lump sum out. So that it'll show that there's nothing left in that fund except that you'll be able to see what was paid in and out.
So those numbers ain't gonna look 9 months straight across the board, $202,900 some dollars.
I have no idea what
That's
that
what it was at one time, it was straight across for 8 months. It was all the way across, there was not a
Not
change.
not for wages, it wasn't. That was in your equity funds. Your equity funds says what equity fund says this is what's clear. Without any debt against it, this is what's there. So equity fund says I started with $10, and I went out here and I made money, and I had a profit of $10, and I added it to it. So when I add that to it, now I've got $20 in that equity fund. So if you look at your profit and loss, it will show profit and loss, equity fund. Because I haven't closed the book, they're not added together, but all you got to do is add them together, and you got what's in the equity fund. That's all it does.
Wouldn't it be simpler just to close the books and have it?
Yes, I think I've tried to explain that, and I'm not going to try it again.
When
Yes.
you talk about we have $1 million in the bank and things are looking good, right? Does that include?
No, I didn't say we have $1 million in the bank. I said there's $1 million worth of income.
Okay, so if we have $1 million of that money
That's scattered over the year.
there, that's income or whatever, what percentage of that or what amount of that is proprietary funds? You know, the funds we're talking about, the pool or whatever. Is any of that considered in that big lump of money or not? Proprietary funds, excuse me. So when you
Line
talk about that-
23. Line 23. Oh, that's not right. The line 23 was put in the actual income for the last 2 years, and then this year I read that you are not supposed to put the proprietary in there because it's not supposed to be relied on anything but the proprietary. So that's one of my questions to deal with the auditors about how to do that. If you look on page 4, see that proprietary function funds? It's actually marked out. In other words, proprietary can be run as a business. And it is assumed that everything that goes in, comes out of that business is spent in that business. However, everything that comes in from taxes and those kind of things has to be spent as a government fund that has to be spent for the betterment of the city, for the running of the city. Okay? When Charlie was here, they took 60% of all wages, clerks, everybody in the office, everybody, 60% of the wages was paid out of the sewer fund. That's why there's nothing in the sewer fund.
So of the whole big pool of income that is potentially coming here, this is the amount of it that is going to be used as a proprietary fund. This is already taken care of.
I don't know. I can't tell you figures on proprietary without looking at a profit and loss fund.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do that, but it's just not clear.
So the big pool doesn't look so big when you take those funds out of it, right?
I think that with the, pardon me if I'm pessimistic or optimistic of one day to the next, because, after you spent 12 hours staring at the numbers trying to make them balance, you can get pretty pessimistic when you look at 6 million and 6 million, But we spent, we spent on equipment, and we spent on land, and we spent, we built the strip out here that does our roads. That's done as a rule every 3 years, and then it has to last for 3 years. So Larry had warned me the year before. He said, we're going to have to build that strip. We're out of stuff. So this year we built it cheaper, I believe. Part of that was because we had the new truck and we hauled it cheaper. We didn't have to hire somebody to haul. And then Ed works cheap so he could drive it. And we've used more of it because when it sits there and dries out, it's no value, and so you're putting more dry stuff in a hole and whatever. That's why we wanted the miller, because as our street engineer said, anytime you can do that stuff in-house, you can do it for less than half the cost of having someone else do it. So we can pick up that old stuff and reuse it instead of throwing it in the ditch. We still want to get that. We still want to get that spreader because we want to be able to do that with the gravel and do what we need to do. So that's you're going to be asked again. The equipment, we bought a pickup because the other one had spring sticking up through the seat, and you couldn't drive it out of town because you couldn't trust it. Do we have to go out of town? Yes, because sometimes you have to go get parts. And if it's immediate, whatever. We've saved a lot of money by doing a lot because we've had effective work between the two maintenance guys, because Patrick has a lot of experience with mechanicking, and because Boomer's a good mechanic also. They've been able to fix things that they never had the time nor the place to do before. We have put $50,000 into a CD that will help pay for the Sharon Street when needed. We've got to get some money out of city funds to go that way because we've used assessments so far, so that has to be a consideration. And we don't have, and we've paid off 2nd Street and we've borrowed no money.
And I would encourage you two new guys to go with Boomer and Larry. I helped them last summer in the street some. I enjoyed it. They are using that chipper, what's supposed to spread out the gravel. I'm not sure it was made in 1950 or earlier. And last year it wasn't running worth a shit.
That little chipper.
Yeah, that chipper.
It's about this big anyway, so you...
Thanks to the guys, they went out to the Crosley gravel and found an old engine out there that was there and took the carburetor off of that and put it on that chipper to make it run.
So we're stealing, you know, parts from this and that and the other thing. This is not willy-nilly. I had the guys sit down and make a list. What's the oldest and the least effective, whether it's the oldest or not? What needs the most work? What will cost the most? So we have a list going. And one of the things when we bought that, see, we bought the one truck that we put what do you call it, the sludge truck. I call it the crap truck, I'm sorry, but so I never can think of the name. But we put that tank over, the truck that was hauling it was downright unsafe. And yes, it was just brakes, but it's far enough back that even if you are able to find the parts, you know where you get to that point, you buy this brand new thing, but it doesn't fit because everything's worn around it anyway. So it's wasted money to buy the new part. So we got rid of a 71, was it? 73, and was able to buy another one for $4,000.
Less than
35 or something like that. And just moved the tank over. We also was able to sell the old one for $300. So, you know, come out pretty well on that. We'd had it forever. So then what's the next move? Well, let's take, because we're probably going to have to buy a new truck to haul sludge if we do this sewer, right? That's what we were told. But what if we don't need it? Now, what if we go to a lagoon and we don't need that truck? So, because USDA had said, boy, golly, you're going to buy a truck and you're going to buy a new truck. And it's going to cost you $170,000 or some dumb figure. So, we're sitting here saying, we're going to come up with all this money. Well, I'd rather put that in the pipe, maybe, or maybe find another avenue. So we need to keep open to all possibilities. Next.
Are we on number 4?
I think I just kind of finished the purchase of policy for purchasing.
Okay, so we're not done.
Okay, question.
Anything above and beyond what it takes to run the city, we need to approve.
You approve everything that's
No, we didn't approve crushing of the rock. We didn't approve $1,400 of office supplies that I still have no idea what that was for. So everything above and beyond what it costs to run the city, we need to approve that.
Okay.
It needs to be brought to the board.
Okay.
And we need to approve it. And then when we okay the checks, I want to see receipts.
Okay. To my knowledge, there's nothing there that is not receipted.
I'm not saying there isn't, but we never approved it.
They were here at all the meetings, and you approved them on the claims list.
We never approved to have the work done. You brought it like last week's meeting, or
Okay.
2 weeks ago. No, let me speak.
Okay.
You said we had $1,400 in office expenses. And I go, what for? And you couldn't answer that question.
No, because I hadn't looked at the...
No, but we never approved.
Okay. Stop just a minute.
No, stop. We never approved one.
You're not going to be able to approve everything that we need in the office. That was
Yes.
for envelopes.
You didn't
That's
spend
all it was.
$1,400 on envelopes.
Okay.
Because you told me you bought a new computer, You had a computer revised? I just bought 1,000
That was-
envelopes for $100.
Okay.
You didn't spend $1,400 on envelopes. There's no
You
way.
remember what they were, 3, 3, and 3?
It was 500 a box of envelopes. I think it was 500 envelopes for $374, but they are stamped.
Stamped self-addressed envelopes that we send the water bills out in. We've never had, I mean, that's just been a standard thing that we always bought when we needed them. We use one box every month.
Three
So the
boxes.
3 boxes that we bought would have been for about
Three boxes were
$1,200.
bought, and the checks, we got a.
And then we bought checks for the bank account.
That was $1,400.
It's 14.
Well, plus some miscellaneous. I was gonna put it in your packet for this next regular meeting, because it wasn't on the special meeting,
Right.
okay? So I'll have it there for you to look over. But they're stamped envelopes.
Right.
So it's 55 cents, I think it was like a
Right.
dime an envelope, after you get the stamp off it.
See,
That's what it costs.
that's the cheapest we can buy, is
Right.
having already stamped.
Okay. But what I'm saying, you know, something like that I can understand. But I want to know what that is for.
That's fine.
But go
And,
back.
and that's just newness, but those are always here, and I always encourage, when I first started, I started going through everything, and everybody said, that's too boring, don't do that.
Let's start it back up.
Okay.
Let's bring the receipts in, but things that are above and beyond what it costs to run the city.
Yeah, there's nothing that you don't approve. There is absolutely nothing that's not on the claims list.
Well, we didn't approve the rock crushing.
The rock crushing is a road supply.
I understand that we didn't
Okay.
approve that.
We always we were talking, you came on, but we were talking about bringing the rock in and stuff, and because, a long time ago, because Kelly was gonna have the crusher come in and do all that.
I understand.
Just a lack
I
of
understand.
communication.
But right, and that's another thing. We just need to be on the same page. When we're spending the city's money, I have no problem approving things. I just want to be aware of what I'm approving.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Not a problem, not a problem.
Okay.
I had an individual stop and talk to me about some title insurance on this property out north. This person, I asked him, how come we didn't have it? He explained it. The banker's the guy that come and talked to me. The banker went and had something, apparently, you probably know about this, maybe you don't, that they're going to do title insurance on that property because that property is really no good to us if somebody's got a lien on it. Every time you buy a piece of property, you have to have title insurance. You were aware of that, right?
Yes.
So my question is, somebody's gonna have to get paid for this, and how come we didn't take it out? Because the buyer and the seller splits the cost of that title insurance, and there should have been title insurance on Mr. Hodson's property, and there should have been title insurance on Mr. North's property, and there should have been a sort of 50-50 deal, and now we're gonna get stuck with the whole thing because they're paid off, correct? So why was it, explain that to me.
Okay, be happy to. When the contracts were being drawn up, Kelly's lawyer, who is Mr. Curtis, drew up the contracts, and that whole process didn't cost us anything. I thought that was pretty cool. We were talking about the expenses, and I'm going to take the whole blame there because I thought I was smarter than I am, except I just said the wrong word. When I bought my house, I was told by my banker that he didn't want any mortgage insurance because if I didn't pay my bill, he was going to come after me, and he didn't need any mortgage insurance. And I said to Kelly, we don't need title insurance. I messed the two up. So, and he said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. We don't need that. We did need the title insurance. We did not need the mortgage insurance. So you can lay that one right at my feet, but you could also lay it at Mr. Curtis's feet. You could also lay it anywhere you want to. When we drew the check and it went through the bank, whatever. Anyhow, when we all caught all this, we all said, this needs to be taken care of. I called Mr. Cooper about it and said, whoops, and he said, you know what, I can order that. And I said, okay, so I called our lawyer and I called Mr. Hodson. I said, got any problem with that? And they said, no. I said, Mr. Cooper, would you just go ahead and do that? Because he knows the title insurance place, he would be happy to do that. He put the order in. It has not come in yet. I have no idea what the cost is, but usually it's not prohibitive.
But if it's on Mr. Hodson, then Roger North's got to have it on his too, correct?
He'll take care of both of them, I'm sure. He's not going to separate them out.
They're two separate parcels.
Yeah, but the bank's doing it. He's not going to separate one out.
No, but there's going to be two charges, because every time you buy...
Okay, I said I don't know what it's going to cost, but I don't think it'll be prohibited. Okay? And Larry called me today and said that it just isn't in yet. He hasn't checked for a while. He then said that somebody's checking up on it.
And you, since you brought it up, I'm going to bring it up. So every time we reach out to a lawyer, they slap, what is it, 100 and, what's he charging?
175.
No different than reaching out to him about getting a budget or a agenda. We read, you guys, I think in Arlene's email that we reached out to the lawyer, you needed an agenda. There was $175 just to ask us for an agenda. What is the procedure of reaching out to our lawyer?
Well, when we had Mr. McNally, he charged us $250 a month, and he did all that for nothing.
Well, $250 is not nothing.
Well,
$250 a month is not nothing, and I...
What I'm saying is, when we made those calls for advice, they were not charged separately. He only charged separately if he had to do research, or like when he was asked to go to Lincoln for the Ponca tribe thing, those kind of things.
So can we put a procedure in place?
The procedure's already in the ordinance. We don't, if we want to check on exactly what is he talking about? Of asking if there was an agenda.
What is he asking about? Well, if we call up Mr. Stevens and say, you know, these agenda items, what is the council's procedure for him? Is he going to charge us $175 an hour? I think is what he's asking.
Well, I'm just asking, what is our procedure even to contact the lawyer at $175 a pop?
It's not a pop, it's an hour.
Well, I think once you call him, that's an hour.
I don't think so. He'll charge by the minute. Just all the rest of them have phone conference for 12 seconds or 12 minutes or whatever. To answer your question, James, if I don't know for sure whether it's legal or not, what do you want me to do? Ask you or ask the lawyer?
Well, I think there's some questions you could run by us, and if we don't know the answer to, we could ask. It was no different. Bob and I brought it up. You contact the lawyer to see if we need to give you an agenda for the meeting tonight. All you do is ask for the agenda for the meeting tonight.
Okay, move on. We'll do that.
Okay?
But we need to know what the procedure is, because we don't want to do something wrong, and it's pretty unusual for the council people to call the meeting. And had we not looked at the ordinance, you would have come in with 2 signatures instead of the 3 that was necessary. That's what you did. So
But
it pays to know the law, doesn't
that
it?
had nothing to do with Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, it has to do with legal.
You guys had the book out when I came in the office with the 2 signatures. If you wanted 3 or 4 or 5 signatures, I had no problem getting all of them.
I made the phone call to Mr.
Stevens,
and said, what should we do here? I'm going to do that because this is unusual. So if you don't want me calling in, then you come in with everything and you know.
Perfect, I have no problem.
Exactly.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
that's what he's there for.
That's fine.
Is that it? City treasurer and clerk? Is there any problem with that? I gave all of you a handout from the book that identifies exactly what their jobs are when you came in.
The city treasurer each month is supposed to give the board a balance on what we have in our account and what the checks are.
And you get that with your profit and loss and your balance sheets and that, all of that. That's it. It's all there.
you know exactly what we have in our checking account?
Absolutely, it's in the balance sheet.
And how many checks are out?
Doesn't matter how many are out, the balance is there. If you want a reconciliation, that can be one of your requests. See, Charlie always came in and said, I called the bank this morning and there's $500 there, last outstanding checks, but I don't know what they are. Our system puts the check in there, we know exactly what the balance is. If the check doesn't go through, then we have more than we told you, but it is dedicated to that check, and we don't get it back till that check doesn't cash. So we have a better.
How come the board don't see the city gets a monthly bank statement just like I do and everybody
You
else?
can come in and see it anytime you want to.
Pardon?
You can come in and see it anytime you want to. We can bring them in, you can look at them, I don't care. You can have a copy.
That's what
It doesn't tell you anything, it doesn't tell you as much as what's in the books, but that's all right.
But it would go hand in hand with what we.
Whatever, I don't care.
Bring it.
Make it on your list, what you want.
Just bring in the receipts so we can see that this check was written.
Put your list together of what you want every month.
I'll get you a list.
Okay. Anything else there? Number 7, assignment of preparation duties of the monthly account balance to city council.
Yep, I think we just covered that.
Okay? And a review of the city insurance policy. And Mr. Lecter's here if you want to ask him questions.
Right here. Ryan, you gave it to me today. I didn't have a chance to, I printed it all off and didn't have a chance to review it. I'll take a look at it and I'll just touch base with you, if that's all right with you. I just wanted to go over mainly some deductibles, maybe changing some stuff around. The policy's in great shape. It looks like we're just off firsthand. I just wanted to visit with you a little bit over that, if that's all right with you.
Anytime.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Is that it?
Well, I just wanted to make a statement as far as, obviously, you said earlier that you're not being evaluated in this process, and that cannot be. We have to have the ability to question you. But if the mayor is a position where we can't question you, that is a kind of a form of evaluation. So if you're excluded from that, I don't know how that works. Because we have to be able to question things that you're doing, and I don't try to make that personal, but we have to be able to. Larry has to be able to actually question, because I don't think any of us. I mean, I'm sitting here, and I'm being evaluated by everybody in the room. When I teach school every day, I'm evaluated in the room.
What's your point? What do you want me to do?
That it's okay to say that you're above evaluation.
I didn't say that. I said tonight I am not going to be evaluated about how I acted or how I said this or how I did that, which is what he was doing. I've answered all the rest of your questions. Do you have another one? If not, I'll ask for an adjournment.
Okay. You have any more questions? I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by James, second by?
I'll second.
Second by Larry. Ida?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
And Larry.
Yes.
Motion passed. Adjourned.